That's absolutely fine. As you've already said, I'm a British politician. I make no apologies for that, but I'm also a proud daughter of Ghana, and I maintain my citizenship. Other than my unwavering commitment to human rights of all people and the pride that I have in my Ghanaian heritage, these are just two of the things that leave me deeply concerned about what this bill will do to fellow people of Ghanaian heritage and people of who may visit Ghana. But it also really concerns me what it's going to do to Ghana's international standing within the world. Now, quite frankly, you've heard other views, but it's my view, and not just my view, that the bill really does empower the abuse and the infringement of both the constitutional rights and the human rights of other Ghanaians. And whilst direct references have been made to the Constitution by the Honourable Sam George, he will be aware, as others will be, that Ghana is a significant player on the international scene in regards to human rights. It's also a signatory to major international human rights instruments, and these include the rights of LGBTQ people. So regardless of whatever else is said, these are things that successive Ghanaian governments have signed, and I'm sure nobody would want to imply that Ghanaian governments sign things and do not hold true to them, or that they would be happy to conflict with any international agreements that they have made. And some of the language that I've heard today is not the Ghana that I know. It's not the Ghana that I boast about, and it's not the Ghana that people right across the world want to visit. Ghana, as far as I know, has always had a culture of inclusivity and diversity and acceptance where people come and feel free. Now, I've heard many arguments about Western or international interference, and I would put this to you all. We are here at a Ghana Union debate. The Ghana Union, it may be people of Ghanaian heritage, but it is a diaspora organization. We are resident here in the UK. We are subject to other laws, and we accept this, and we understand and accept that we are members of an international community, as do legislators in Ghana and businesses and every such thing. They understand that we are part of an international community, and the idea that we can operate outside of this international community solely is quite frankly unbelievable. And the key moral arguments, I think Bissy laid out quite clearly, is that there are people around the world who are facing violence and inequality, torture, and even execution, just because of who they love, who they choose to have sexual relations with, how they look, as this happens to us in the UK, Black people in the UK, or who they are. And both sexual orientation and gender identity are key aspects of this, and they should never lead to the discrimination of anybody. Now, we have talked quite a bit, and we've heard quite a bit about Ghanaian culture and family values, and I personally don't recognize discrimination in any of those values. Quite frankly, the way that Ghana is looked at across the world, others do not necessarily recognize discrimination in any of those values. No one claims that Ghana and Ghanaians are perfect, but that's not what people see when they look at Ghana. And this bill, quite frankly, rather than claiming to protect family values, it is calling from the destruction of family relationships. What it's saying is calling on LGBT people, the parents and the family members of LGBT people, to rise up against them, inciting people to even hate their own children because of their sexual preferences. And I don't see how that is supportive of family values, supportive of that acceptance you're meant to have in a family unit. And I think we need to understand just how much, as a diaspora, this type of bill impacts us. Now, just as many as you may have, I began watching the hearings, and I've seen many different academics rise up and speak against the bill and do it quite clearly. And I was really, really concerned to hear Honourable Sam George's reflection on about it being about public health and public interest. Perhaps the most problematic of this is the references to HIV. Now, there's been a lot of work done over the years to remove the stigma that there is around HIV. And the argument, to continue pushing the argument that HIV is spread most widely by homosexual sex is not helpful to the tackling of HIV. In fact, instances where HIV is spread has got a lot to do with ignorance. It's a lot to do with ignorance and incorrect sexual health And that's pure and simple. And this type of ignorance actually is the reason for the prevalence of HIV, because you have people believing that they're only going to catch it if they're having a homosexual relationship. That makes absolutely no sense. There are many, many instances in Ghana and across Africa, across other countries in the world, where HIV is spread in heterosexual relationships. And there are people who claim that ignorance and continue to have unprotected sex, and this is how it's spreading, and it's killing people. And so that is a lack, I think, as far as I'm concerned, of clear education when it comes to sexual education. And people need to be very, very careful when they throw out these words in order to create stigma amongst people, but also when they use it in a sphere such as this, because it creates issues where people are not well informed and not well educated and continue to spread this particular virus. And I have to ask, is what people do in the privacy of their own rooms in a consensual manner really the major concerns facing Ghana today? It'd been touched on before. There are other issues. There are issues of healthcare. There are issues of education. There are issues of economic standing. There are issues of so many different issues. And I have to ask, whilst people may have their individual preferences and prejudices and why they may not want to see this or may not want to talk about it, in terms of how it impacts Ghanaians, is this really the most important thing? I think about how much legislative time this bill is taken up and it will be taking up over the course of the next few months. And with all of the other issues there are, not just affecting Ghana, many issues post-pandemic affecting so many different countries, is a bill like this really the best use of your legislators' time? Now, in the year of return and everything since, we heard the president of Ghana call out to people from the diaspora, from the African diaspora all across the world, and say that Ghana is open. And we saw that calling Ghana open and all of the things that were done to make Ghana open and a welcome place for people to be able to come and travel and revisit Africa in that way was of a major boost to the Ghana economy to the tune of billions, quite literally billions. Why would we want to shut that down? Why would we want to expose Ghana to this kind of international scrutiny that would actually prevent people from coming into the country? Now, I don't understand why the state would want to regulate issues of sex between consenting adults. And I'm thinking about it, the way the law is passed, it's not just impacting Ghanaians, as I said, it's impacting people that visit the country. It's impacting people that visit the country. Again, they're not coming to do anything to anybody, quite realistically. The state is there to protect children, to protect people who are weak, to protect people who are vulnerable. So if there was an issue where it wasn't consensual, absolutely, I think the state should take action. But when it is, what interest does the state have in doing this? And how does this benefit Ghanaians overall? I simply cannot see the benefits, but I can see a lot of the negatives, and I'll go through some of them now, particularly financially. And I can tell you that this bill in itself has repercussions on the interim trade agreement that you have with the UK following Brexit. We won't be the only country that does this in terms of, or has these kind of clauses within our trade agreements. And that's something that I do not believe that Ghana can afford. But whilst I mentioned Brexit, I would say that the poll that has been taken and that has decided to drive these figures that you've put out about what Ghanaians think about the issue is not too far off what happened with Brexit. The Brexit vote was a referendum vote. We don't actually run the country by referendum. If the government had wanted to reject the referendum, they would have done so, but they didn't, because they thought it was a popular position. And as you see, and as you quite rightfully mentioned, this so-called popular position has not done well for our country. Now, as Ghana is recovering from the economic damage caused by the pandemic, like everybody is all across the world, this type of legislation is really going to put unnecessary pressure on finances, the stability of the exchange rate and the growth of development, as well as threats to broader market access. And I know it could quite easily lower the amount of people that are willing to participate in the finance of Ghana and invest in Ghana. Fewer multinationals choosing to invest in Ghana. Is that something that we would be willing to risk simply because the law conflicts with their corporate or corporate culture or anything such as that? Again, how does this bill benefit Ghana? How does it benefit Ghanaians? Now, it could even go as far as to affect how aid is flowing into the country. And I think that's really problematic, given the situation that we know that some people in the country find themselves in. Now, if you continue to marginalize any groups and alienize stakeholders, you create this really dangerous situation. And again, I just cannot understand why we'd want to put ourselves in that situation. But people seem so willing to do it. I even heard something which, quite frankly, really embarrassed me. I heard that there was a member of parliament in Ghana who threatened to beat the Australian, who said they would beat the Australian High Commissioner. Now, as a Black person living in the UK, as somebody of Ghanaian heritage, when you hear Ghanaians saying something like that, it would make you feel quite embarrassed. I don't care what it is that the Australian individual said, as long as it wasn't anything that was particularly harmful or threatening. But for us to on a global stage threaten the ambassadors or the commissioners of other countries is actually quite embarrassing globally. What does it say about us as a people? We know that, and we've seen it already in the chat today, the horrible things that people say about us as Black people, and to say something which is quite barbaric is very embarrassing. Of course, people have issues with what they call interference in Ghanaian affairs, but the reality is, what exactly do you think that the high commissions and the ambassadors are in Ghana for? Yet they're not just in Ghana to issue visas for Ghanaians to enter into other countries. They're there to protect their own interests, and these interests include their values. So if they speak out about their values, the idea that they would be attacked, especially when they're not imposing them, they're just reiterating them, and they have done that on a number of different occasions, on a number of different issues over years and years. The idea that you would threaten to say something, to do something to them, is quite awful. And the idea that you would speak up against them when they're just explaining again what their values are, or practicing those particular values, I think is wrong, because you have to remember that they are there to represent their citizens, and they've been given the diplomatic right to do so, and they should be treated with the respect that they deserve, in the same way that I know in other countries Ghanaians will be treated with that respect. And if we demand that respect when we go to other places, we should be willing to give that to people who are in Ghana, quite frankly. Now, I think that it's very worrying that at times when this is being discussed, and we've heard this already, talking about how there's no issue with rights of LGBT people in Ghana. And I've met with the LGBT campaigns in Ghana. I've met with various international NGOs that have looked at this issue. And I can tell you that the idea that people that are LGBTQ in Ghana are not being discriminated against is completely wrong. You only need look up some of the most horrible things. And there are videos. There are videos, there are many articles. There's so much information where people are treated horribly. They're treated horribly, they're beaten, they're abused, and I've seen this evidence. So it really surprises me that in supposedly legislators in Ghana have seen no evidence of any sort of discrimination. And people quite quickly are looking to the idea of the legalization of gay marriage. And I can tell you from having spoken to the campaign in Ghana and others, no one's talking about legalizing gay marriage. At the moment, people are just asking to be able to live freely and to not to be beaten up just because of who they are. And I think, quite frankly, that's a very small ask. Now, I know that there is a particular clause in the bill that claims that it will protect LGBTQ people because it's criminalizing attacking them. But really, is that really necessary? Because Ghana already has criminal codes which actually protect citizens from such attack. So the idea that you'd bring this in as this particular clause in and make it look as if it's being LGBTQ friendly is actually quite unnecessary in the context of the bill, and doesn't detract from what the bill is overall. And in this part of the argument, I'd really like to address the issue of what is popular. Now, yes, we're talking about Ghana, and I want to make clear that no one's detracting from the fact that you're talking about what happens in Ghana and what Ghanaians would like as legislation. But I can tell you that from my experience, for example, in this country, if you were to ask people about the death penalty and whether we should bring back the death penalty for certain acts, I guarantee you that we would have an overwhelming majority to bring back the death penalty. But would we do that as legislators? No. And there's very, very clear reasons for that. And also there are some parts of the UK and some groups in the UK that don't like Black people. They're people who are racist. They're people who are racist right across the world, unfortunately, but we still have issues of racism in the UK. Now imagine if somebody was to come and say, actually, we've done this poll and we've found out that the majority of people in the UK, and I speak to people as people from the Ghanaian Union in the UK, that if we found, oh, we've done this quick poll and people are saying that they don't want to see people in this country. People are specifically saying they don't want to see Ghanaians in this country. There's far too many of them. Let's remove them all. Would we not argue against that? Or would you expect somebody like myself to say, well, a poll was taken of my constituents and they said they want to see you gone. So goodbye, everybody. If you are Black, if you are Ghanaian, if you are African, no one wants to see you here. You should quickly go. Of course not, because that is absolutely ridiculous. The idea that something is popular should not be a reason to make it legislation. There are very, very key reasons for that. We have responsibilities as legislators to make sure that minority groups are protected. Now, I would be completely, it would be completely remiss of me if I didn't clearly state again that I'm a Christian. I believe that Jesus Christ is my Lord and personal Savior. He's the author and finisher of my faith. And I know that Jesus gave 2 commandments, and those 2 commandments, that we must love God and that we must love one another. And I don't see how I could possibly be loving somebody else at the same time as discriminating against them, at the same time as calling for a bill like this to be put on their heads. Now, it's John 3:16 and 17 very clearly saying that God so loved the world that he gave his only son, so that whoever believes in him shall not perish. Whoever. It doesn't specify what type of person it says. It says whoever. And it also says, for God did not send his son into the world to condemn the world, but to save the world through him. If we're going to go back through the morality of the Old Testament, I would also ask, where is the legislation for an eye for an eye? Where is the legislation for chopping off people's hands? And, you know, where is the legislation against all of these things that we perhaps might have seen in the Old Testament? And if we're talking about maintaining culture, I'm sorry to be crude about this, but I'm waiting for the legislation that says, for example, since we're talking about what people do with their genitalia, in Ghana, it's customary for men to be circumcised. When we have our, when COVID is over and all of those booths are eventually taken, are we going to have legislation now that asks when men come into the country, if they're coming to live amongst us, for them to be circumcised at the border? No, because it's absolutely ridiculous. And where to, if we're talking about morality, is there going to be the legislation that stops men cheating on their wives or wives cheating on their husbands? Because that is also against morality, isn't it? To have extramarital relationships, but we don't see this legislation anywhere. So I question again, what is the benefit to Ghanaians of interfering in what people do personally? There is no public health interest, because what's being said about HIV, etc., as far as I'm concerned, a lot of it is based on issues of a lack of sexual education, and the public interest. How does it benefit the public if such a bill will weaken Ghana's economy, will weaken Ghana's standing within the international community, and will ultimately create a situation where Ghana becomes a pariah from being much beloved in Africa, much beloved amongst the world? Now, I would say if you have issues with people being LGBTQ, you have issues with homosexuality, then there's only one thing that you need to do, is that if you are a man, do not have sex with a man, and if you're a woman, do not have sex with a woman, and leave everybody else to do what it is that they want to do. As long as somebody is not harming you, these issues make no sense. And in terms of the judgment that people want to place upon them, again, I say that as a Christian, Jesus, as far as I'm concerned, is a compassionate Lord. And I, like everybody else in this call, is a sinner. I'm not worthy of that salvation, but I know that I'm going to get it. So who on earth am I to judge others and say that God would not give that salvation to somebody else? I have to end by saying that, yes, if we're talking about what is judgment, you've got to leave that judgment to God, because there are no gods on this call, least of all myself or the other honourable member of Parliament. And by passing a bill like this, all we do is damage Ghana in the eyes of the international community. And this may be an international community that will never forgive us. So I have to ask you, is it worth it? And I have to say, me for one, I don't want to see Ghana go this way. Thank you.